Welcome everybody. We've got 48 lovely attendees. People are still strolling in. It is my true pleasure to introduce the amazing Marie Poulin, who does not need an introduction. You all know her, you read her, you watch her incredible tutorials, you see her beautiful workspaces, you know about her plant collection. So today, Marie is just has been so kind to spend the next hour and change with us to talk about productivity, systems design, Notion, to talk about books, whatever, entrepreneurship, and so the way we're going to go is we're just going to start off with a quick little conversation, just kind of get to hear a little bit about Marie's background, and then she's going to dive us into her workspace. She's going to show us how to design the perfect day, and then we're going to field some questions. I've seen it, Marie. It's awesome. And so then we're going to take questions from the group. And as a special, this is really special that Marie, in the follow-up email with the replays, Marie is going to be sharing one of her special templates for all of us to use in our workspaces. So without further ado, I've talked a lot. I am going to ask everyone to go on mute, and then I will be fielding the questions. So I would love to welcome Marie Poulin, who is the founder of Okie Dokie, a workflow strategist and a designer. She also is a Notion pro who runs Notion's office hour videos. You might have seen her there. And she has her own Notion class called Notion Mastery, which I highly recommend. And I want to just point out, this is what makes kind of this ecosystem, this group so special, is that there's no competition. Like, we lift each other up, we support each other, if we encourage each other to take each other's courses. It is it is about a rising tide lifting all boats, and it's not a zero-sum game. And so I couldn't be more thrilled to be part of this Notion community and to have Marie here. So welcome, Marie.
Thank you. Such a kind introduction.
How's it going?
Oh, I feel good. Yeah, I'm excited to chat again. I think last time we chatted was you on office hours, maybe back in January, February. I think you were talking about designing your decade. So now we're kind of going like from big picture to micro.
Yes. And so maybe just kick us off. I would love to hear, I'm always intrigued of the backstory of how, what was the moment when you realized that like productivity and workflow and systems was your jam? Is there like a story?
I mean, I've told some folks this before, but I am definitely not a type A person. I've been like a ball of chaos my entire life. You could ask my university roommates, just pure chaos. So I think it was like frustration and not having an understanding of how to tame the chaos, and working evenings, weekends as a freelancer, and just always feeling like I was working. And I'm like, okay, there's something. How can I be working so much and feeling so ineffective? And so I think for myself, it was just a process of learning and like diving into all the books and who are the people talking about this, who has this figured out. I didn't know a lot of other freelancers as well. So there was just so much, if anyone here is an entrepreneur, like you're a marketer, you're a designer, you're doing your own SEO. Like there's just endless number of things from invoicing, accounting, right? Like you're just figuring so much out as you go. So it's just kind of a research project, I guess, of just like, what is the way to do this? How do I organize myself? What's an ideal web design project process look like? And so I think it kind of stemmed out of just seeing how it wasn't serving me to not have systems, and diving into a couple books and courses and things that have just really shaped me. And I actually hired a systems coach too, who that was like an amazing catalyst, and she helped me. Natasha Vorampiova from Systems Rock. That was an amazing experience. She helped me break down my web design process into a repeatable, standardized process, and look at all of the when things break down, why do they break down? And if so, what are the things that every project always has that's the same, and then where can things kind of go off the rails, and identify them in advance. So I started to kind of piece together like, oh, there is a system. I'm not just like flying by the seat of my pants, which is what I thought I was. And in breaking that down into a process, that became a course. So it was like, hey, web designers, here's how to run a project. So it kind of evolved sort of organically in my own quest to find control over my own day-to-day activities and just stop working every evening and weekend.
Wow. What do you remember? Because I know we have an audience of voracious readers. Was there a book or a post that really kind of like you go back to being the key one or catalyst?
There's a few. One that I go back to quite often is Work the System, I think by
I'm
Sam
familiar with.
Carpenter. That one is excellent. 12-week year is another good one for just, breaking down big goals into day-to-day activities. That's a huge one. I will always revisit that. I think even at least once a quarter, I kind of go back to that and revisit and just kind of anchor into that. So, and over time you kind of build some habits, but I still think there's certain books I always want to go back to just to kind of like remember what's important and how to be more organized, because it's not totally in my bones yet.
Yeah. Oh, I love that's as someone who prides themselves on productivity lore and books. Those are actually two I've heard of. Work the System. I've actually never heard of 12-week year. I'll
Ah,
put them in the
oh
notes
yeah.
when I send them around. So
Actually, and on that note too, someone told me that when they did my course, that's one of the books I recommend first is the 12-week year, especially if like goal setting and achieving is something that you're really struggling with. And someone said once they read the book, the course made so much more sense. I was like, oh, that's good
that's
feedback.
interesting. For my course, that would be David Allen's GTD. It's like so
Right.
anchored in that mindset. So if you were to think about kind of your whole workflow, your systems, your tools, and distill them down to a set of beliefs or philosophies or foundational principles, what would those be? What would they look like?
I think I could probably boil it down to even one sentence is like, decide in advance what you're going to do.
Mm,
That would be a big one. So deciding the day before what you're going to do the next day, deciding the week before what you're going to do the next week, deciding the year before. And of course, it's not like we know what's going to happen a year from now. Pandemic is a perfect example of that. But I think when you can bring it back to what's your vision for your life? How do you want to feel? I think that's a thing that doesn't really change as much as say like the projects that you're working on.
mm,
So that's why I have like a vision and planning dashboard that is a place that I review every day, every week, every month, just to really anchor in like what is most important, what is the feeling that I want, what does an ideal day look like when I'm 50, when I'm 60,
mm.
like it's I think in a way it's kind of easy to be like, yeah, I connected with people, with family, with friends. I want to be playing in the garden. Maybe I want to build a tiny house in my backyard. Maybe I want to be in a different country and like travel and do some volunteer work. Like there's lots of things that can anchor you, I think, in where you're headed, that make the day-to-day decisions and like weekly decisions. Like, is this aligned really with what I said was important? And I think that checking in is important to do every day, every week, as
Yeah.
an ongoing practice.
Now is that process, because I'm quite good at that with goals, but with like larger visions, as it starts to get squishier and less KPI-ish, I start to fall off the wagon. And so does that, so I think about it in two ways. Like you could have long-term outcomes. Like I have an outcome where I want to own a surf camp or own like something that
Yeah.
that revolves around surfing. But then there's like the process of getting there is like I
Mm.
want to always be around people who energize and inspire me. I want to have a commitment to service in my life. And so there's like the process of getting to something, like a very kind of Zen Buddhist approach where like, how do I feel in this moment? I feel great, by the way, in this moment, versus where do I want to be, like the outcome that I want to achieve. And I don't know if you'll show that in your in your systems, but I'm curious, how do you kind of, is that a duality? Like, do you have to separate those two things?
I don't, I think I live very comfortably in the gray zone.
Mm.
So I think some folks are like, oh, do I put this in the areas of the resources? And people can get really kind of stressed about things. I'm like, I don't know, you can change your mind later. It's totally okay. Let's play with this. So I think as long as the process of outlining what you want, I think is most important, right? So even just putting it down on paper or Notion or whatever,
Mhm.
that's more powerful than I think. Did I map a KPI to this, or do I just know because I'm anchored in this, like this is a thing that I want? And as long as it's visible, I think we do a lot of work that isn't easily visible. And for me, that was really why I just fell in love with Notion, was the ability to make big vision stuff, but also
Mhm.
day to day, the tasks I have to do today, visible in the same page is so powerful to me, because it means you are always reminded of what's most important. So I think it's okay if those bigger, like really lofty, dreamy goals don't have a specific KPI that's like
Mm.
moving you toward there. I think vision board is one thing, and
Mhm.
then short-term goals being anything like less than a year is really great. And if, as long as you're like anchored in that, your goals are going to start to move you toward that.
Yeah, I love it. It reminds me of a quote from Tony Robbins: the quality of your life is measured by the quality of your questions."
Ooh, yeah,
And
yeah.
so, like, we don't ask the right questions, and you started, the first thing you said is be intentional. Um, but so that's something that I think about often. So before we get into the demo, one last question to anchor us. I'd say every 6 weeks, there's like a Notion hit piece that's like, I gave up on Notion because I spent 17 hours tweaking the emojis on each page. Or one that was at the beginning of the year by Spencer or something, like Notion made me unfocused and
Yeah,
unproductive. And so like
yeah.
every 6 weeks there's one of these posts, and I get it. I mean, I signed up to a separate website that's like $11 a month just to get the emojis. So like I got problems. But what do there's this concept of the tool, and then there's the way you use it. How do you coach people? How do you feel about that distinction between the shiny new toy syndrome, or
Totally.
actually
Being effective.
using it? Yeah,
Yeah.
being effective.
Yeah, like yes, there's a lot to say around this too, right? It's like Notion is the box of Lego blocks, right? Whereas something like Asana or Evernote or whatever is like buying the Star Wars Lego package, right? There's like, it's opinionated, and you can kind of plug in and play, and that's great. And so I don't think Notion is the tool for everyone. I think it's great for builders and people who want a lot more control over what their spaces look like. In some cases, I do think it's going to end up being busy work, and that benefit isn't outweighing the time spent. So I do think that is a factor. I'm not here to like convince anyone that's not already convinced. I tend to work with people who are like, I saw it, I see the potential, I just don't know how to harness it. Those are the people who they're indoctrinated. I'm like, cool, let me show you what is possible with this. And I don't know if it's certain industries, certain brain types. I would say like 1% of the people who've taken my course have left like, I want a refund, F Notion, this is a cult, like, I hate this. I'm like, okay, like money back, no problem. Like, and they're mad at the tool because it makes them feel stupid, right? So that is the trickiest part of Notion. It's so powerful, you can do anything, but you have to know how to work with it. And not everyone wants to do that learning, and that's totally fair.
Yeah.
So if other tools are working for people and they're finding that flow, that's freaking awesome. For me, the integration of all the things being in one place is just magical. So it's very polarizing, and I
Totally.
think it's great. People are going to gravitate to the tools that make the most sense for them and their workflow.
And you and I have been on some threads in Reddit and other groups where it's like, if the tool enables you to live the life that you want to live, effing go for it. Like, you have
Exactly.
found the tool, and just, that is the tool. That is your jam. I'm not going to hit on it. I'm going to support you to the fullest. I think in this very polarized world, like, people can get so attached to a tool that is like defines them as it defines their identity. And like, I know you and I are both like, hey, if the tool supports you and living your best life, we are all
Exactly.
for that tool. It could be like a text editor, Emacs, or not going to hate on Emacs. A lot of people use Emacs. So, all right. So with that, why don't we jump in? We are all students to your wisdom and inspiration. So,
What's up, kid? Yeah.
oh, I'm just gonna max your
rogue mute.
unmuted.
Oh,
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and walk us through the perfect day?
perfect day. Okay. You can see my screen okay? And is
Yep.
the dark mode okay for screen sharing? I know sometimes people prefer the light mode.
Yeah, works for me. I think it actually
Okay.
says a lot about the person too. So, like it's another personality trait. So, if it's
Yeah, and
your
I'm not married to it too. Like sometimes I'm like, I'm gonna try the light mode for a while. So there's a page here that I'm gonna share with folks that has the journal, sample manifesto, rituals, and ideal day here. But essentially these pieces live within my space in different ways and whatnot. But so you'll have examples of this. But the idea is that every day I'm reviewing like what is my like personal manifesto. I know, Kay, you were talking about like having almost a personal OS. Like that's a project even I'm working toward as well, is like almost having a code of conduct, your own operating principles, your own mission, vision, values. And I think really anchoring yourself in that every day as just part of your review process of like, what's going to make today awesome and what do I stand for is just going to kind of help set your day up for success. So this is an example. This is mine. And there's just kind of an example here. It's super simple. There's nothing fancy about this page, but what the world needs more of, you know, how I want to feel, how I want people to feel, what energizes me, all of this stuff. So you can kind of use this as a template if you'd like, and feel free to kind of think about it and plug in your own. I think that would be pretty helpful.
I'll pause you for 1 second. It's got
Yeah.
an ikigai feel to it, right? What are my unique talents? What does the world need right now? What can I get paid to do? And
Yeah.
I forget what I always forget the fourth one's like. What do I lose where do I lose myself in time or something like that? So I love these like simple questions. They're simple, but they're actually quite difficult to answer.
This stuff takes time, and it's something worth going back to even like monthly, quarterly, yearly. Every time I do a review, I'm like, okay, does this still fit? Are there words, like new words that feel more aligned? And I go back to them over and over again. I actually hired someone to do a brand essence session last week, which was so fun. And the best part is she sent this as a Notion document,
Awesome.
which is amazing. So she embedded this here, and it was like anchoring in like, what are those values? What is my vision for the world? And then content ideas were in here as well, you know, so like, it was just really cool to kind of get a little bit of that, an outsider's perspective too. And having someone else ask you the right questions that really pulls like, yeah, what are the conversations I want to be having, and what matters to me? So I think you can't really design at the day level until you're like, what do I want more of? What do I want less of? What is not working? And Kay, I know you've talked about that idea of starting with the self-awareness piece. Like, what are you most proficient at? What are you the best qualified to do? Because then your schedule and your day should be designed about optimizing for that kind of time and reducing the stuff that should be outsourced and all that. So yeah, the manifesto is a good one, I think, to review on a daily level, certainly on a weekly level. And then there's a rituals document here, also similarly kind of simple. Like, what does an ideal day look like? Let's spell it out. Obviously, it's going to be different for everyone. Maybe Kay's waking up at 4:30 in the morning to catch that surf or whatever. And of course, this is pre-COVID too. So like, I don't go to cardio cabaret class anymore, unfortunately. When do you reach your desk? Focus blocks, right? We talk about focus rituals and things like that. So my calendar is pre-scheduled with all of these blocks. So deep work blocks are every Tuesday, like 2 or 3 sessions on a Tuesday, 2 or 3 sessions on a Thursday. Those are like, do not book me, do not, and Thursdays, for example, is optional guest webinars and things like this. So those are all preset in my calendar as recurring events till the end of time until I change those. So I have multiple blocks. And then as I go week by week, I just say like, which client did I work on for that deep work block? and again, this is ideal case scenario. It's not like every week and every day goes according to your ideal plan. So, but the idea is putting that intention forward. And when you do this too, when you block out your calendar based on what's ideal, how do you want to be spending your time, you can be like, oh, I actually only have like 8 hours for client work. How did that happen? Like, it really puts things in perspective. So this is a template that you can feel free to fill out, but I just come back and revisit this and look at my calendar and I'm like, okay, am I really doing this? Like, are the evening projects becoming, am I working till midnight, or things don't always go according to plan, but the process of planning this and just putting that time in, I think is really valuable.
And I love how the first two things you showed us, we talked about all the features of Notion. You could use Google Docs for that. It's not about the tool, right? And I think, many of the rad readers have heard the kind of 3-pillar approach. It's like you mentioned, self-awareness, which is what you've just showed, right? Intention, the tool, Notion, Google Docs, Roam, whatever. And then behavior change, which I think is probably baked into some of your rituals, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so here's another one of ideal day. What is your zone of genius, right? What is the type of activities that are really most essential? And I'll talk a little bit about my own task management, 4 categories of like essential, deep work, small wins, and daily grind. Right? So it's like the essential work is the stuff that's low effort, super high impact, and not something I could really get my assistant to do. It's like the stuff I'm uniquely qualified to do, those like $10,000 an hour tasks. And so that's like, okay, content creation for the course, group calls, consulting. Those are the things that are almost irreplaceable, and they're the things that light me up and get me all excited. So again, these pages are super simple, but it's just the process of putting it down. Like, where do you want your time to go? Tuesday is deep work, and I try to color coordinate it too. So again, my calendar has like a green deep work. So there's a lot of similar colors that kind of help anchor a lot of this stuff as I move through my weeks. So I think it's good to just design this in advance, decide how you want your time to be spent, and then work should fall into place and not the other way around. I've definitely been guilty of that for years and years. Honestly, was just working all the time. Did not know what it looked like to take a day off, certainly not a week off. So really reverse engineering it and being like, what is the absolute ideal way I want to feel? What would it take to do that? Let's book that into the calendar. And then what's left after that? Can I be profitable? What does that look like to reverse engineer that? So, and there's some other ideas of days you might want to put in there too, like a money day, management day, administrative day. Like, there's lots of different ways you might want to theme some of your days. And yeah, everyone will have access to this too. So you'll definitely be able to play with that.
How do you, so this is very driven by someone who controls their own schedule, solopreneur, content creator. How do you encourage your students and your clients who have less control, like they have a boss or they have a bad boss?
Right. Well, I think it's about ruthlessly protecting the time that is up for grabs. What spare time do you have available, and what matters most to you? I think I've got a priorities. It's always tricky. I'm like, okay, I don't want to share something like super personal, but I've got my personal priorities here. This is also like very different person to person, right? For me, learning is like, I want to be learning all the time. Like, I crave knowledge. I'm super curious. This lights me up. I'm so happy. So there's a 2-hour block every Saturday and Sunday that is just it's called brain time. And it's like, learn, consume, play, read article, like just get in it. And that is so important for me. But I've seen other people's that have like, learning is at the bottom. And the idea is, if you're having a tough week, like, you cannot do it all. This is like, if I absolutely had everything all the time in the world and everything is going according to plan, I'm doing all of these things, right? But let's be honest, for me, the dishes and household projects definitely take the backseat when other things need to get done. Like, I turn into a complete slob, things aren't getting done, and like my husband has to pick up the slack. We know that this is the deal. This is the list of priorities. For other people, like for my husband, home might be like one or two of like, if I feel very anchored if like the house is clean, right? So even recognizing within a couple, you might have different priorities. So physical well-being and fun, like having a slow coffee more in the morning, like just chill out, have a coffee. If the sun is shining, be out on the patio having a coffee. How can I design my day to make that a thing and not feel like panicked, got to answer the emails? I'm like, no, you're good. You've got that time set aside. So these are the things like social media and YouTube videos. Like if I don't have time, like that gets cut.
Yeah.
Email newsletter, it's just, I don't have the bandwidth this week, that gets cut. So by having a list of priorities, you can anchor in, be like, you know what, that's just not going to happen this week. And that has to be okay. We have to be a little more forgiving with ourselves as we're figuring this stuff out.
Awesome.
So in many ways, it always just comes down to these like really, really simple principles of like, what do you want? What's most important to you? And don't be misled, I think, by thinking other people's priorities are your priorities. So I see August Bradley producing those videos every week and they're amazing and they're high quality. And I'm like, I just think I don't have that energy. Like I just can't this week. And when I have time again, I'll pick that back up. And that's cool because I'm making time for my own personal development, reading, learning, and that fuels me. So what fuels me is not the same as what fuels you. So we got to honor that.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I mean, many people on this Zoom call will know Tiago, my friend, who's, mentored me in a lot of this stuff. But like, I get super jealous. Like when he got a book deal, I was like, I gotta, like, I called an agent that I knew and it was like, started to like brainstorm a proposal. And then I zoomed out. I'm like, writing a book to me is like 4 or 5. I'm just not interested in it right now. I'm having way much more fun doing these other things. And, my personal priorities would look somewhat similar to yours. But then in that moment, I got pulled violently in that
like
direction.
A little like twinge of something, right? Like I should want that. I should have a book.
I know. And I started to go down this rabbit hole and I'm like, wait, time out. I don't have it as clearly laid out as you, but I do have versions of this. I'm like, okay, go back to what's important. And then you're like, oh yeah, I don't want to write a book right now. And so, that will come one day. So I really like that because I think one thing that a lot of rad readers struggle with is comparing themselves to others. Right. And FOMO. And so at least when you have those things, that simple document you just showed us, when that FOMO machine starts revving, because, your college roommate raised a $2 billion round and you start working like crazy, you go back to that document, you're like, okay, I'm good.
Oh, I can so relate to this even with like my husband and I run software, but neither one of us was excited or passionate enough to go all in on it. And it was like, we don't want to be this like teachable level product. Like, I don't want to be running a team and managing people and delegating. I was like, it feels like a thing I'm supposed to want, but I don't really want that. So I think sometimes we forget, we kind of get swept in depending on what bubbles you're in, that like, is that really the only way? Or like, is there maybe a different way? And I like to lean into that curiosity of like, what could it look like if I didn't do it that way? Like, what do I really want? What could it look like? What's possible? So.
Love it.
Yeah. So I sort of have this like vision and plan, which is sort of a dashboard for, again, vision board, 25-year vision. I think that one's from Taylor Pearson, has a really great course there. Some like business and health and just life stuff, like where do you want to be heading, and like what does your day look like in 25 years, which is like a crazy exercise to go through of, okay, how old am I 25 years from now? What does my life look like? You start to zoom out and you're less focused on the micro projects, and you're like, oh yeah, what is my life? What's my legacy, right? So I think that stuff is important to really anchor in when you're planning your day-to-day. So this is my dashboard. I've got the sort of bigger active goals here, which I can view in a number of different ways. And I can scroll down and say, do all active goals have outcomes defined and projects that support their completion? And I've got a couple different, views of this. So like, just show me the ones this quarter, just show me ones that are, show me reflections only. So I can be like, what went well? What didn't go well? And then project planning. So do all active projects have next actions? Have any actions been completed? Remove them. So I don't do a lot of like the day-to-day planning in here, but it's just nice to be like, okay, what's on my plate from like big to drilling down to the daily level. Calendar here, we've got
Do you
guest
use a
workshop here.
Tiago Forte definition of projects, like something that would take a couple weeks to complete?
Um, yeah,
He
it's
tends to
tricky. Like
have like burstier projects. That's his recommendation.
mine tend to be, I think, a lot longer, maybe like
Mm,
3 months or
okay.
so. And I think that's totally personal preference for sure. Um, yeah, and then task overview. So that's kind of like everything gets, anchored in the vision and plan. And then really for me, the day-to-day stuff is happening inside of my weekly agenda.
Oh, can I pause you there? One
Yeah.
more. So so you have the big the vision. So create a workout habit. That's big picture, and there'll be tasks linked to that or projects linked to that.
Yeah, so it's like the year, the quarter, the progress, what are the outcomes, what are the projects? So there isn't a project there, which is probably why the like progress isn't there, right? So it's like I have to do the work to put this in and say, well, what's it going to take to actually make that a habit? It's been like on my list of things to do. It's off track
Mm,
here, right? So I
yeah.
know that I'm going to have to, with COVID, like maybe make more of an effort now that I can't go to the dance studio or the gym or whatever. I'm now going to have to kind of like manufacture new habits, and that takes time. So I'm treating that as like it's a goal, and then there's a project that would need to support that hasn't been created yet. But I know it's here as an active goal because I want to see it here as a thing that needs to be planned.
Got it. And you cap, is there a limit to how many goals, big picture goals you might have at any point in time?
Like 5 is probably the most I've probably ever had. Um, I know someone asked about the progress bar too. We can share any
We'll
like
share it in the links.
yeah. Yeah, I'd say in an ideal world, you'd probably have like one major goal per quarter, maybe in a couple different categories. But some of the
Mm-hmm.
like my permaculture diploma is something I've been working on for like 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was break it down into like the presentation. I know that I have to do a presentation. So yeah, you can see it's, yeah, deliver a workshop, projects that are related to that. There's no notes in here. So some of them I'm inconsistent with, like I won't always give everything like what are the KPIs and how am I going to achieve? Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
always get super deep on every single goal, but to me, the important thing is that you've mapped it out. Like this is important to me. This is what needs to get done.
Yeah. I'll grab Robert's question because I would imagine that people who are more in the earlier days of Notion are looking at this and are saying like that probably spent 20 hours just to create all this. So how much time do you take to update, tweak, plan, filter? I don't know what the right measurement window
Yeah.
is.
It's pretty minimal at this point because I just have the core databases and I have the templates made. So I think it's the beginning part, I think takes a while. When you're figuring out your own system, that is the hardest part. And I think that's where that learning curve can be quite frustrating is where do I even begin? How the heck do you even do this? What databases do you need to connect? For sure, that learning curve is really tricky. But once you've got the core components of your system, it's like add new month. There's already like a month template. It's got everything. Like it's quite easy, I think, once you've figured out what you want. And the weekly agenda, for example, is one that I've been using for almost 2 years. The template has evolved quite a bit, but it's as needed. I'm like, oh, there's friction here. What else? Like, I want to pull my weekly review into the week itself and not do that in a separate page. So there's little things like that you tweak
Mm-hmm.
over time. But I don't actually spend that much time like playing or tweaking around the way I used to maybe in the beginning.
And I would imagine it's no different than sitting down on a Sunday and saying, okay, what are the 6 things I want to accomplish this week? And what are the things that are done? And then just kind of like, moving things around that that one might do on a piece of paper or one might do, it's the actual
Yeah.
planning process. The other thing I would point out, Robert, is that when you see, and I don't know your level, Robert, of expertise in Notion, but when you see something like this, I would also know that this group of people are there's like like there's a craftsmanship in just like kind of always like chipping away at a, you know, a
Yeah.
statue, or and so this is just the way it looks is the result of just like a fun passion to just kind of tweak the edges, and that over like multiple years so that you get it to this point. But if you see this and you're like, this looks like way too much, it would be distilled down to a handful of spreadsheets that are, you know, spreadsheets and databases that are linked in a way that's, you know, useful for Marie to see.
Yeah, and again, this, you know, has evolved over time to totally be based on the way that I work and my type of business and all of that. So it's definitely evolved. Certainly the system did not look like this even in the first 3-6 months of use. But I think what I find really fun about it is I feel like it has made me more creative. So now I'm putting more time into, like, gardening is a thing that I never really thought to document before, but there's so much happening and so much learning. And as I'm doing my permaculture diploma, I'm like, like, let's make that, like some of you might've seen the garden hub. So there's it's pretty nerdy. There's like a lot of, you know, garden diary here. I've got all my annuals here, my perennials, and then they're linked to zones, and I've done a zone analysis. Like it's super nerdy, but it actually is quite helpful for me too. So that, to me, like that was a fun creative exercise. I was already sharing, like saving these things anyway, garden inspiration, wanting to build a shed in the backyard. So this just kind of pulls it all into one place. So when I'm ready to like think about that idea, like all of this wisdom is here. And to me, it's been really fun to just, oh yeah, there's these things I'm passionate about that maybe were like saved in a Evernote folder and then kind of like started to decay, and I'd kind of forget what was important. So there's something to me about just the things that are most important to you being very, very accessible. Lots of other garden nerds in here potentially. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that was the vision and planning, is just kind of where the day, the week, certainly the weekly review, just really anchor in here and just check, are the goals up to date? Do things need to be adjusted, and are things off track? And if so, why? And just that. And then, yeah, I jump in at the week. The week is really where I think it was the first piece that really started to feel like it was giving me control over my day. So I was storing a daily journal, which I, again, had never been able to do before, never maintained a journal habit until Notion. And then by connecting it up to my weekly agenda, as I fill data out every day, the weekly agenda fills out and it becomes like this report, this summary, which I just love that ability to kind of at a glance, you know, I was showing Kay earlier, show me all of the things I've written that I'm grateful for. Show me all of my wins. If you're ever having a bad day, to have a place where you can go back and say, wow, I actually did do a lot this past month. I thought I was really ineffective, or I thought whatever. When you go back, you're like, oh yeah, I actually forgot about that. So I love being able to dip in and remember what's important, remember what I'm grateful for. It's fun. It's more fun to me. I'm actually more incentivized now to use this. I don't want to break the chain because everything's connected. So I want to keep filling out that journal every day. So this is one of my personal favorite use cases, is this weekly agenda. Let me know if you have any questions. Wow. And then I can visually please. Yeah, that's like, it should be inspiring. That's what I love about it. Let's shrink that so you can see that a bit better. And let me know if the zooming is okay here. I know sometimes it's hard to read.
It looks good. It is so visually pleasing.
So what I do usually every Sunday is I come in, you know, create a new week here. And then I will actually pre-fill out all of my weekly journal entries here. So let's just add a new one just to show you what this looks like. And then there's templates for everything. So like that's a Tuesday. So I click Tuesday, and then everything is activated. Right? The theme is pulled, the day of the week is pulled, and then what needs to get done today? What's going to make it a good morning, right? And that's going to be different for everybody. What's planned today? So these are just my master database already filtered to the journal entry, right? All those filters are already created. Notes and ideas filtered to today as well. So if there's like a new thought, just add it right there. End of day. And then there's that collect and process as well to like encourage me to go back and go through all the readings and things that have maybe been saved and clipped, but I haven't processed yet. I try to do that on a daily level. It doesn't always happen. I try to, at least at the end of the week, try and clear out some of those things. But that's the basic add a new entry to the journal, what needs to get done, what's most important. And then what I do is I replace this image with a photo of the day. And then once the week is over, I switch it to review. And then you won't see it because there isn't a different photo, but one of them is showing the cover, one of them is showing the body image. So then I have this like lovely, what were the photos of the week? And it just kind of gives you a flavor for like, oh yeah, that was that week. And you can kind of remember it visually. So I just really love that. I feel like that's really delightful. And then I can also turn on in the review process, show me, did I win the week? Did I do the things I said I was going to do? How did I feel about it? Entering all of those emotions, and you know, let's put some of this detail in so you can kind of see what this looks like. Did I reach flow state? Was I like so in the zone that I just lost track of time? Like I track that stuff too, and then I can look back at my daily journal in a few different views and say, show me all the days where I was in flow and I was 5 stars super effective. And then I'm like, oh, cool. Thursdays are my most productive day of the week by far. Cool. That's like really cool data to learn, right? So there's been a lot of this. The more that you feed the system, the more insight that you get about, oh, I can see a clear pattern when I am super effective and winning the day. I always know the next week or two is like a less effective week. So instead of fighting that and being like, oh no, I'm not like, I'm falling. No, there's a flow. There's an ebb and a flow, and that's okay. And so I think you get more awareness the more that you fill this out and you pay attention. To me, Notion is a tool to pay attention to what you're paying attention to. That's what I love about it. So I will pick
and you
3
you
words.
end up
Yeah.
you end up going back to like research, like look for patterns in prior days to shape future behavior. Is that?
Yeah. So one of the things last year that I did when I was doing my yearly review was I showed all of the journal entries by words. And then I actually could see like stoked was the word that I used 56 times in the year or something like that. So like, that's really like how often you're using certain words, or, certain words that keep coming up in the gratitude, and how many times I've like mentioned my assistant's name in gratitude, or my husband, or Ben made me dinner. Like it's simple, but there's something about it that just reminds you what matters. And also reminds you when you reflect on what's not working, like what can I do better? That's the one that I think is really interesting, to be like, get outside and drink more water. Like, so there is that element of how many times am I going to put this in my schedule before I make meaningful change? And for me, it was overwhelmed. I was like, why am I make the decisions about my project. So what am I doing here? What needs to change? So I actually had, fire 2 clients who was just taking up way too much bandwidth for just eating into that gardening time. I was like, this is kind of silly. I'm going to have to make some adjustments. So it's like, I can't blame someone else for that. The things that are on my plate are there because I said yes to it. So what needs to be removed, and what's essential, what's not essential? So, entertainment database, so movies and shows kind of get pulled in. So sales database too, so I can see my sales at a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly level. There's lots of my setup in particular. I know it's a lot more advanced than a lot of folks setup, and it might feel really intimidating. But by tracking this at this level, like I just love being able to, again, dig into that data. Like, is there a day of the week where there's more sales? Like that, I find really interesting. Like Fridays or Saturday morning, like, Friday night, people buy my course on a Friday night because they're ready to like spend the weekend, binge watching some Notion videos. So that's really fun. So yeah, that's my general journal process. And I go through at the beginning of the week, preset these up. And then I also add, what are the win the day activities for that day? Try and decide in advance as much as possible. So I'll try and go through every day of the week on Sunday, and I'll just at least put one task in there. And then you'll notice there's usually some already in there, like write email newsletter, because that happens every week. Well, that's already in there as part of the Tuesday template, but I can also pull in any of these other actions here, like, oh, clean up the Knowledge Hub template, right? I can just pull that in. Did I do it? Yes. Okay. I can click win the day. So It's fun to me. It's like, it's fun and easy. It doesn't require, as long as I just fill these out at a minimum, the rest is bonus, right? Like what happened today, recap. I do that if I have extra time, but at a minimum, I want to fill these out. So I just at least have a little snapshot of what's happening.
So cool. Pete asked, how do you, what did he say? How do you review wins? I believe he asked. How do you track the wins for later review? So I guess you just answered that.
Yeah, and it's always a little tricky. Yeah, right. It's always a little
You're
tricky.
like, oh,
like
what's this gonna pull up?
Yeah. There's a number of different views in here too. I don't know which one of these are like totally safe. Gratitude. Right. So yeah, win the day, effectiveness, words, gratitude. Like I have a couple different views here, like show me my feelings, show me my sales, goals, flow, progress. And because all of that's connected by the journal roll-ups, I have a lot of flexibility in terms of what I see here, which is pretty cool. So to have a list of like all the ways you can improve in a big giant list is pretty fun. So that's one way that I review it. And then I'll also share at the end of the day process. Scroll down here. Again, I don't know if this one is totally safe to share, but this week's highs.
Just do the like really quick close. That's what I do. I'm like, oops, shouldn't be there. Quickly close. You know, everyone's on YouTube pausing to that 1 second to screen grab what you just tried to hide.
TMI, just learned a lot about me. What I actually do is, re-embed this week in the review, and then I just show the highs, lows, good, happy, whatever, just to kind of, oh yeah, how did this week go? And then do the mind sweep. So, dump anything here from professional, personal. I just kind of use this as a trigger, and then I just dump a bunch of ideas here, and then maybe some projects emerge out of that. So I can then open up the projects one, and I can be like, oh, that's a project, that's a someday maybe, and you can just kind of drag it around right in the week, right? I don't even have to leave the week to do this review. All of it can be done here. Next actions, check off any completed actions, review next actions. Ideas, are there any new creative, wonderful ideas in your head? Put them here. And I think this one's just filtered to the past month. And then goals are here too, right? Pull those back in, and then the outcomes are here as well. And then personal development, update and summarize any course learnings here. Right, so this all becomes part of my weekly review. I pull a lot of those core databases into here. But then one thing I also do is the collect and process that I try to do end of day, also end of the week. And some of you might be, familiar with this inbox situation, but essentially I'll use the Notion clipper, send it into the inbox, decide if it needs to be elevated into my knowledge hub. So this is sort of the catch-all. And then if I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely like, I want to keep that, that's an important thing, I can drag that into the knowledge hub. And now there's like a ton of properties, like, okay, that was a YouTube video, that was with Daniel Schmachtenberger, right? And I'll fill out all the metadata related to that as part of that processing. So the idea is to clear this out at the end of the week. So I'm going through a process and really taking that time, maybe like a Saturday morning as I'm doing my brain time in the morning, I'll kind of clear this out. And then, any next actions that kind of came from that right here, any new projects that might've emerged from that. And then my knowledge hub is right here too. So you'll notice a lot of the same stuff gets repeated in different places, because I hate that sort of clicking down, oh, where did I save that? The rabbit hole. I'm like, I'm just going to make sure that these are in multiple dashboards so I'll never get lost, because the views can kind of show you different contexts, which I think is really interesting.
And I think too that the right information finds you at the right, at the right time. But more importantly, what I've found that's really unique about this is that it's the right state of mind. It's like things find you, right? There is a way, once you kind of get these systems working, and they kind of, they kind of are reflections of your personality and how your brain works. So you can kind of set yourself up for easy wins by knowing when I'm reading articles, I'm usually also doing this, my big ideas come up, and then you can just put them next to each other and kind of create your own luck that way.
Yeah, and on that note too, I think if any of you are like me, maybe you have 10, 12 courses or books on the go at any one time. I'm always kind of consuming information in different phases, because something is relevant to you, like in this week, in this moment, like difficult conversations, I'm like in that. And then suddenly I'm like, oh wait, now I'm like working on my marketing thing over here. So I will often put things on the back burner. So I can show you with the learning dashboard, but these are like courses that have been marked as back burner. So maybe I did a module or two, but now I'm like, I can keep going on this course, but it's actually like, I got what I needed right now. I don't need to go any deeper. I can set that and forget it while I focus on this one that is most important, and minimizing your like work in progress, right?
Mm-hmm.
Minimizing the number of things that are like pulling at your attention. So don't worry, move it to the back burner. When you're ready, as part of your review, you're like, oh yeah, now I want to like make that one important again. Let's like activate that one so it shows up on my dashboard again. So
Mm-hmm.
it's there when you need it, but it doesn't have to be like, oh gosh, here's a giant list of all of the articles and things I've got on the go, which I think a lot of us like struggle with or suffer from, especially if you've come from Evernote where it's like, whoa, there's just like a giant archive of everything you've ever saved. There's something about the views that can make it a little bit more digestible and more visually appealing, I think.
Yeah. Marie, if people are watching this and just seeing so much data and so many intertwined things, what would you tell them? Like, I'm always on the lookout for big dominoes, like
Yeah,
high
yeah.
leverage things that they could set up. And maybe it's a notion, but maybe it's, more broadly. I know for sure, just reading the chat, some of the intention setting that you did just in like a document at the beginning. I think that's definitely would qualify as kind of a high leverage, big domino. Is there anything else in your setup or workflow process that you are like, this one thing drives 80% of the outcomes?
Oh, yeah, that's so tough. I know it'll be kind of different person to person, but I think in general, a review process. So again, I think a daily journal is so effective.
Mm,
I think everyone should have a daily journal, even if it's just, there's no properties at the top, it's just a date and like, just here's what I'm thinking, like get it out of your head. I think that's a really, really important thing as you reflect on the day. Because I think it's super easy to just get swept up in what's expected of us. I am guilty of that too. If you're a people pleaser, you're like, you just kind of get swept up in projects. We forget that we do have a lot more control maybe over it, our time, than we think. So if you're not paying attention to where your time is going, it's way easier for you to get swept up in other people's expectations of you. So journal, I think, is huge. A weekly agenda, huge. A knowledge hub, even if I know some folks maybe want to do like a database of books or a database of whatever. I don't do it by type anymore. I used to. For me, knowledge hub is like, it's like wisdom I'm collecting, courses I'm doing that I want to come back to, that are like, again and again, they're just important. They're things that I know I can revisit anytime, and there's going to be super smart notes there. I think that's some kind of knowledge hub, whatever you want to call it, a place to kind of collect that wisdom.
mm,
I've got I can show you what my resource databases look like. Here are like the main ones that I think kind of form the skeleton. Knowledge hub, notes and ideas, of course, some kind of notes and ideas place where you can be like free brainstorming, unstructured, like just thoughts that you're having. A tag database, master tag
mm,
database, that might be a bit more of an advanced use case, but I have found it tremendously helpful. It's connected to almost every other database in my space. And hopefully it loads. Right, so I can see what type of information am I consuming, and with what topics. I mean, Kay's probably in here too. If I open up, there you go. Right, like, who are the people having those conversations? Who are the thought leaders, the other people that I look up to, or people who are creating content that I'm consuming? I love having a tag database as a way to like unify and pay attention to what are the notes and ideas that I've been creating related to productivity. What am I consuming? Also, what's the relationship between creation and consuming? Like, there's 28 items here that I'm consuming in the Knowledge Hub, and maybe haven't created that much. So that's the thing I like to pay attention to as well. Like, how much am I creating versus consuming? And
mm.
there's like ebbs and flows, and there's seasons in your business. And so sometimes there's going to be times where you're more in like research mode and consuming, but you really got to shift out of that and make sure that you're actually creating something with all of that stuff that you're downloading. So I find the tag database can be really helpful for just pulling in some of this stuff, words and wisdom. What am I collecting around this? What am I writing about this? Even like Tiago's 12 problems, like what does an ideal day look like, right? That's like, very relevant to this
Yeah.
conversation, right? So that's to me, I feel like this is a really anchoring domino in the space, just for paying attention to multiple different types of content all around a topic, to kind of show you like what are you really paying attention to, and where's your time going.
And that's grabbing clippings, tasks, notes to yourself, everything. It's like across your entire life.
People, notes and ideas, knowledge hub, inspiration, words and wisdom, content's like my own editorial calendar.
Oh yeah.
Tools, the 12 problems, and not all of these get filled out, assets, events, swipe file, things like that. So it's hard to know what the big dominoes are. I do think that will be a little bit different depending on your business. Are you an entrepreneur? Do you work, what's your goal with this? For me, a place to, again, view big goals and task management in the same place, I just think is so powerful.
Awesome. Well, we are running up on the hour, and so I wanted to maybe switch gears. You've given us so much to think about, and I'd love to field some questions in the chat. We've been trying to chip away at them. A few people have asked about the templates. Like, we're going to share enough to get you going, but leave a little bit to be desired. Because this is Marie's work and and career and profession. But if anyone has any questions, drop them into the chat. I've been collecting a few as well. So I might start with one while we're queuing up the questions, which was, how do you stop caring about what other people think?
Oh, look, I'm still working on that. That is a work in progress, a lifetime. Is that an actual question? That
it was
asked?
An actual question. Yeah.
Wow. I guess in what context?
I forget who asked that. So whoever asked that, if you're still on,
that's really interesting.
On the call, just jump on in and follow up with that.
I mean,
tips for not comparing yourself with others. So it was when we were talking about, Tiago getting a book deal and.
Yeah. That's where having a vision outlined somewhere, where you really have to ask yourself some hard questions to know, like, is this what I want? Is this really what I want? Do I just think I'm supposed to have a book? I've definitely wrestled with that too, where I was like, should I be working toward that? Or is it a framework that I want to build? Or what is it? I'm not really sure. I'm not attached to the format, and I feel like the format will reveal itself. But I think it's important to almost pay attention to who are the people that represent who you want to be when you grow up, right? I love looking at it like that. Like, who is the grown-up version of kind of who I want to be? Leila Ajaralu is someone I really look up to. She's got a permaculture farm in Portugal, and they're doing brain cafes and social permaculture, people who are creating amazing change in the world at a larger scale. Yes, these that is so inspiring to me. Those are the people that I want to look up to as an example of what is possible. So I think there's that seeing what's possible, but also what's my path, and it's going to look a lot different than other people's. And I have to be okay with that, because at the end of the day, I'm the only one who's going to live in this house and live this life. I better be happy, and it better be my goals that got me there. So I think it's just deliberate practice, right? I think I don't have the answer. It's just.
I might chip in there. The answer is that we're human, right? So we're social animals. I think that similar to you, I have what I call kind of a success statement. So instead of letting other people define success for you, like having a book deal, writing it on your own terms and kind of align with, your family and the people you love and care about. And so on mine, there is, to be able to creatively express myself every day. That's one of my measures of success. Another one is to never feel rushed. And people go bonkers when I say that. They're like, you're an entrepreneur. You can't do that. I was like, watch me. I'm not saying I've achieved it, but you like the way you started. If you design your day and your intentions around, not, Tuesdays and Thursdays are deep work. You probably won't feel rushed on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Another one I have is to only be around people who give me, who bring out my best energy. And so, again, a lot of this is determined by working for yourself, where you can, fortunately get to a position where you can say no to a potential client, because that's not the energy I'm trying to bring into my life. And there's no amount of money that will make me say yes to that kind of energy. And then lastly is one for me, my favorite is to surf every day. So, so that is, I had to redesign my life. Like I physically moved next to the beach to make that one happen. And that was, a 35-year, journey, and is still somewhat in progress. So, so those are a few. Another one that I'll get a little bit existential is the, is your self-worth conditional?
Ooh.
Right? So you would never say to your child, or I think most people wouldn't say, like, I will only love you if you achieve this. You would never say to a friend, you will only be my friend if you clear this threshold of achievement. And so by definition, your relationships with those individuals are unconditional. However, we seem to forget that for ourselves.
We're our own worst enemies, for sure.
And so it's not directly related to comparison, but comparison can really kind of
the thief of
fire
joy.
up. Yeah, comparison is the thief of joy. My coach gave me a mantra: compare, despair.
Yeah.
So that one is, I find myself, look, I worked on Wall Street, and now it's hard. I'm sure you feel this too. Like, our performance is on display, right? Follower counts, email subs, YouTube views, like, everyone knows. It's hard, you'd be a superhero to be able to just say that didn't matter. And so I think it's constantly chipping away at that, and that self-awareness.
And one thing that I have found helpful, I've heard people call it a couple of different things. I call it like love notes, but just storing all those things where someone's like, you make me 10% better every day, or like, this course changed my life, or whatever things that clients have sent you, kind words that friends have sent you. Have a database of that's just like love notes to remind yourself the impact that you have. It's not just about like, oh, I need flattery to feel good, but what is the impact of you putting yourself out there, and also what's at stake by you playing small. My leadership coach said that to me, and it was just it really reframed things. Like, what's at stake when you are not putting your work out there? Like, who needs the work, and who is not getting helped because you were too afraid, or like, oh, it kind of sucks, or like, who is like taking the pressure off yourself and reminding yourself, like, who needs this work more than anyone?
Yeah.
And why am I not showing up for those people? So whenever I can like get out of my own head about it and be like, who needs to be helped, that's way easier to show up for, and be like, right, yeah, I am creating impact for people. This stuff does matter.
I love that. What's at stake from playing small? Who's at it? Who's
not being served? Tanya Geisler.
Tanya Geisler. I'll put that in the notes.
One of the exercises that she had us do was creating your authority thesis. And it's like gathering the evidence that supports you are the person to do this work. It's so simple, but it's like, and I did that in Evernote originally. That was where I had my authority thesis. And it was, again, whether it's testimonials, case studies, things people have reflected back to you, results that you've gotten, KPI, whatever, anything that supports your authority around a certain thing and kind of reinforces that evidence, helps you get out of your own head with the stupid gremlin voices that are like, man, you suck and it's not enough. It's like, no, the evidence actually is telling you that you're full of shit.
Yes. Love it. Love it. Any other questions in the chat? I love, leave it to RadReads to always, I always say RadReads is where I use productivity to bait you in and then hit you over the head with the existential. Y'all thought you were here for Notion, suckers. So while we're seeing if there's any other questions, Danny, fellow pro, said, is there a benefit to comparison? I'll let you take that one first.
Oh, yeah. I don't think comparison is inherently bad. In the brand essence session, actually, that I had to do, there were some really great questions in there that, again, like who's the grown-up version of who you want to be when you grow up, and then also who are the people whose message you really resonate with, and who are the people who you're like definitely not like that, because I think that's helpful too. Like who, and this is something Tanya Geiser also had us do, was who do you envy and who do you disdain? Those tell you a lot about yourself, because then she got you to unpack, like, why is there a disdain? Like what's being like triggered there? And it almost always points to a value. So there was someone that I had on my list, and I was like, it's like, he's so phony, and like all of their pictures are really curated. Like, you kind of get weirdly animated about stuff. Like, I don't know why this is like triggering me about something. And she's like, sounds like it's pointing to your value of authenticity. And I was like, oh yeah, yeah, okay. So I think there's a lot of information when we're like triggered by certain things or comparing or whatever. So I think comparison can be helpful just as an anchoring point of like, love what you just said about productivity is almost like the little hook, the bait to get someone in to have a bigger conversation. And for me, there's a lot of like permaculture principles, but people don't know what permaculture is, and they don't necessarily like what gardening, like they don't really know. So I want to make it more accessible. I'm like, how do I do this in a way that like give them what they want, sell them what they want, give them what they need, kind of thing. So finding that language, I love that about your brand too, just that rising tide floats all boats. Like, yes, what do I love about Khe's brand? That, yes, love that. What about this other one feels a little bit off for me? And identifying that that's cool for them, it's not my vibe, but what can I learn about that? Like, why is it that I don't like the way they've done that? It's not bad, it's not wrong, but it's different, and I want to kind of do this thing over here. So comparison can tell us a lot about ourselves, I think.
Yeah, I love it. It's a moment for self-inquiry. Perfect. Well, people we're getting so many nice messages. This does go, the love notes, you call them love notes, I call them jar of awesome. This definitely goes in the jar of awesome. Maybe before we sign off, let me see if there's I'll leave room for one other question if anyone wants to dive in the chat, or just F it. We're at the end here. So just unshare, jump into the video and jump in.
Yeah, I can also stop sharing, and I'll make sure to share that link with you and the group if folks want a starting point. And just to clarify, I think there was a couple questions about it, but that journal, obviously it's just like text entries at the top, but the idea is you would connect them to your own databases, right? So if it says Knowledge Hub or whatever, you would connect that to your own Knowledge Hub. If it doesn't apply to you, just delete the field. So take what fits and leave the rest.
Awesome. Well, that will wrap us. But most importantly, Marie, I want every person on this call to go to your website, sign up for your newsletter, follow you on Twitter, look at your amazing YouTube videos. Where should and I'll put all this in the follow-up email. But where should people go to? Where can people go to learn more about you and your special talents?
Yeah, mariepoulin.com is where most of the action happens. You can find my YouTube videos on there, Instagram if you want more of the like behind the scenes, existential, gardening, whatever. And Twitter as well, pretty active on there. And then we've got office hours every Friday for Notion too. So yeah, you can find me all over the internet.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank all of you. I think we maxed out at close to 80 people. So thank you for spending this past 70 minutes with us. A huge thank you to Marie. She's such a badass, and I just get super inspired to just like listen to her talk and learn from her. And this is one of these moments where I have to like pinch myself. I'm like, is this really what I do for work? And so thank you. Thank all of you, all 80 of you and Marie for being, being so rad.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Like always love connecting with you, Khe.
Awesome.
And I'll send you the link and have at her. He can
Yes.
send it out to
We're gonna have
your
a
folks.
wonderful follow-up email with so much good stuff. And Marie and I are always super active on Twitter, so you can always reach out to us there as well.
Thanks so much, Khe.
All right, bye everyone.
Bye,
Have a
everybody.
great afternoon and a good weekend.